What's up, guys? I just want to cover this real fast. This is a big part of my income. Even if you can't donate something to help, whatever, this is how I make my money. I basically, YouTube's a fairly good size of my income monthly. If you can't donate or you don't want to, that's fine. Feel free to smash the like button, hit the subscribe button, all that good stuff. But if I kept you from spending hundreds or $1,000 easy at a shop, consider me. You know what I'm saying? It takes time to make these videos. I love giving free information, but it also feels good to have my back scratched too. You know what I'm saying? So everything you need to know is in the link below. Also in the comment section, you'll find all my information in the pinned comments. And I hope I help you guys out. You can help me out. Let's get started.
What's going on, guys? I Fix It in Your Face. I'm going to show you the easiest way to winterize your motorcycle, whether it's a sport bike or whether it's a cruiser. I'm going to show you the easiest way today to winterize your motorcycle, to create the least amount of problems when you go to get started next year. I think you'll find that 9 times out of 10 this will work perfectly without creating extra issues. First thing you want to do, and this is just the way that I do things, or did do things when I lived in Michigan, was to remove all of the fuel out of my tank on my bike before I park it. There's a couple ways you can do that. I'm going to show you a really easy way to do it, and then I'm going to show you the more complicated way, or just kind of walk you through how to do that and explain it. The other thing that I do is I also remove the fuel from my carbs. Okay, so on the bottom of your carbs, there are little screw holes. They're drain off, basically float drain offs. On the bottom of the carb float bowls, there's a little screw normally. You can just back that out. All the rest of the gas that's in there will drain. Just make sure that you tip your bike upright when you go to do it so that the bike is completely flat and the gas will settle all the way at the bottom of the float so you get the majority of it out of there. That will keep ethanol damage from being created, wearing out the gaskets, stuff sitting in there and sticking. I would also let it dry. Get as much fumes out as you can. So just leave those screws open for a little while. Give it like 3 or 4 days. Leave the screws open. Let those carbs breathe, and then put the screws back in and lock them down. Okay, but first I'm going to show you the easy method to remove the fuel from the tank. And this is the way I do it. I'm going to show you the tool that I use. I'm going to tell you where you can get it, because honestly it's very cheap and it will really simplify your life. So let's get started here, and then we'll move on to the next step. Alrighty, welcome back. This is a very nice gadget to have. These cost around $8. They take 2D batteries. This is to remove the gas from a gas tank. You basically stick this end in there. It has a pump. Stick that all the way down to the bottom of your tank, like so. And then you just fit this end into whatever gas device that you're going to be, putting this in. So in this case, I'll be filling this gas can. I can actually set this here if I want to and just leave it like this and just monitor the sitch. There's a little red button on here. So basically this is to get as much of the gas out of here as I can. And then when we get down to the bottom, number one, you can either take the bike for a ride and run out, almost the rest of the gas, or you can remove the side panels. If you have a sport bike, you remove the side panels and just drain it from the side port. This is a really easy method because this gets almost like 95% of the fuel out. And then if I just take a 10-minute ride, basically, the rest of the gas is gone. This is a 600cc, so it's going to eat some fuel very quickly. So I can get all the way down past reserve with this current setup. So I'm just going to show you what I do. Just going to go ahead and turn this on, and you'll watch it'll start feeding the gas immediately. This pump's pretty powerful on 2D batteries, so we'll turn it on. There goes the gas. As you can see, it's really simple. I just sit here until my gas tank is full, the container's full, and that's it. That's pretty much how easy this is to do. It's just a very quick transfer device. So this is much faster and easier than tearing the entire bike down and gaining access to the fuel line to pull it out. This is moving a considerable amount of fuel right now, if you can tell. I mean, the entire line is completely full. So we're moving right along here. So anyways, this is just one way. I'm not going to go until the whole thing's full, but I'll turn it off. You can see it'll stop the drain. It goes back in. So I've actually got quite a bit of fuel back in here now. So this device, like I said, is great to have, especially if you winterize your bike every year. This thing is super cheap. Takes 2D batteries. You can pick it up on Temu. I'll actually supply the link in the description below. Outside of having this, like I said, you have some work ahead of you, especially if you're a sport bike person. You have to pull the plastics off the side of your bike to gain access to the fuel lines, to then drain them off. And if you have a vacuum driven petcock system, then it's even worse, because then you have to remove the entire petcock off of it just to drain the fuel. It's a really frustrating, annoying thing. Having one of these really simplifies your life. Like I said, guys, it's $8. You can see, you just turn it on, boom, starts producing gas. Within a couple minutes, your tank's completely empty. You saved yourself a lot of time, energy, and effort of tearing the entire bike down. So, anyways, cut that off. Let that drain back down into the tank. And that's the gist of it. So, there you go. Let's move on to the next step here. Have a little chat. Make sure I don't get any gas on my brand new fairings. I would be very upset. I just restored this bike. Yeah, so there is a lot of gas in here right now. It filled almost half of this container in like, 20, 30 seconds. So I could easily drain this tank very quickly. All right, guys, I'll see you in a second. All right, so let's say you don't have that wonderful little pump device that I have hanging up over there, right? You're gonna end up coming over here, and like I said, on my sport bike, you're gonna have to pull the panels, and then you're gonna have to remove the gas line, and hopefully you don't have a petcock or vacuum driven system, because then you have to remove the petcock to get the fuel out. That would be very frustrating. That's where, like I said, that would come in a lot of handy for you guys. All right, so same thing with a cruiser. If you have a vacuum driven petcock system, guess what? You're gonna end up, gaining access to it. Some bikes are nice to have what's called primary, and if you have primary settings, then you can activate primary and it will just start flowing the gas. Some bikes don't actually have primary. They rely specifically on having vacuum. So if you have a primary setting, that's really nice, because once you activate primary, it just opens the valve and then you can drain the gas immediately. You just hook a little tube up to it, set your can of gas down on the ground, and drain it out. Now, with this bike, like I said, if I was winterizing it, I would have to yank the plastics. So I would have to pull this panel and these panels all the way down on both sides to gain access to the carbs, to drain the carbs. And yes, it seems like a lot of work, but I'll tell you what, it's a lot less work than actually having to have motorcycle problems when you go to start your bike next year if you don't do these things. Now, if you have fuel injection, guys, big difference, okay? For you fuel injected people, all right, you can drain your tank same way, get it down as low as you possibly can, and then start the bike up and just let it completely run out of fuel. Just let it go until it runs out. If you want to idle it or drive it until then, just let her go, right? Take it all the way down past reserve, stay close. You can just sit there and let it idle out. I mean, that's... You hear a lot of people say, oh, put stable in your tank, add stable, then you won't have carb problems next year. Dude, the ethanol is still sitting in there. You won't have as many carb problems, but a big majority of the time you still end up with carb problems. The only true way to winterize it would be to remove all of the fuel from the system, right? Out of all the lines, out of the carbs, out of the tank. If you can get all that out of there and clear it, then when you go to start your bike next year, all you have to do is add fuel, wait for the carbs to fill up, or prime your fuel injector a few times, crank the bike over. Now, let's get started on the second point I want to make here. Stagnant fluid. Your oil is fine. Don't have to change your oil. It doesn't have to be winterized. Like, your oil can handle the tolerances of cold weather. You don't have to worry about draining your oil. You don't have to worry about changing your radiator fluid. None of that stuff. Just get the gas out of the bike. However, one fluid that does not do well sitting is brake fluid. Okay, especially hydraulic driven systems, which is what most of these are. These calipers are hydraulic driven systems. Okay. Every month you want to come out and grab your brake handle and do this. Prime it a few times. Just come out once a month and just prime it. You don't want stagnant fluid sitting. You want to pressurize and depressurize, pressurize and depressurize. Do this a good 10 times. Come out every month, And just do this a good 10 times. Same thing with your rear brake. If you have hydraulic brakes on the back, do this. You don't want fluid sitting, not moving, right? It's an easy way to create problems with your bike. You see what's happening is there's lubrication in these systems, and if you're not lubricating them, then the seals dry out. And if the seals dry out, then you start having brake problems next year. So you want to come out, cold or not, doesn't matter. Come out and do this once a month, 10 times to each one. Right? Every month. Just give them a squeeze. Doesn't matter the bike, whatever. Cruiser, sport bike, doesn't matter. Stagnant brake fluid creates problems. Okay? They're hydraulic driven systems. You need the lubrication to go up and down, otherwise the seals dry out. Okay? Next step, guys. Some of your motorcycles will have a battery maintainer. Some of you won't. A big question I get all the time, do I need to remove the battery from my bike to winterize it? And the answer is no, especially if you have a battery maintainer. You can leave it in there. It's not going to affect the system. If you want, you can disconnect the battery from the bike and leave it on a maintainer. That's completely up to you. You can leave it connected to the bike. It really is not going to affect things like you think it will. The biggest thing is to leave it on a maintained setting. So if the bike is sitting, as you can see, this says off. If this charge falls below a certain amount, right, this will kick back on and make sure the battery's topped off. Okay, these sealed lead acid batteries, or SLA batteries, cannot fall below a certain voltage. Stagnant batteries that sit can definitely lose voltage and amperage over time. If you keep them topped off, that's when they're happiest. Okay, think about when you're riding your bike around. It's constantly producing almost 14.5 to 15 volts while you're riding. This is meant to do the exact same thing. It gets it up to 14 volts and then it keeps it there. If I turn this key on, you should see this come on. It should start drawing power. Oh, there it is, 13.4. If I turn that off, it's going to check the battery until it gets up to its certain point again, 14.7, and it turns off. It topped the battery back off. So this is in maintain mode, basically. If you don't have a battery maintainer, you definitely want to get one. It will keep you from having to buy a battery next year. Just keep it maintained. It can sit in the bike on the maintainer. Doesn't make a difference, right? You don't even have to leave it connected all the time. Just come out maybe once a month, make sure the battery's topped off, put your maintainer away. There's just little things you can do to save yourself a lot of problems in the long run. Here's another one nobody ever thinks about: tire pressure. Okay? Your bike sits with a ton of pressure in the tires. You can actually let some of that out for the winter. It's going to naturally let some out because no matter what, the tires are going to lose a little bit of pressure, but you don't have to let them sit there fully inflated. It's actually putting a lot of extra pressure because you're not riding it. The tires aren't heating up and cooling down, heating up and cooling down. So what'll happen is the rubber will actually start to harden, okay? That's when you end up with dry rotting and things like that. The best thing to do is actually just push your motorcycle around for a minute. So if you can, and it happens to be a good day, let a little tire pressure out, right? So you can push so basically if you can take your fingers and push into your tire a little bit, that's probably about the pressure that you're looking for. You don't want it rock hard. But ideally, if you can, just take your bike outside and push it around a little bit. Work the tires in just a little bit, every 2 months maybe, right? You just want the tires to flex and stretch a little bit, okay? If you can. It's not one that everybody thinks about, but if you want your tires to last for a good amount of time, it's definitely good practice to get into. So I think that pretty much wraps up the proper ways to winterize your bike. That's how I would do it. It would guarantee you the least amount of problems. So if you want the least amount of problems, the biggest one here is brakes and draining all the gas out of your bike. Guys, Stable is a good product if you're only going to let it sit for maybe 4 months. If it's going to be 6 months or better, I would just drain all the fuel out of your bike. There is no reason to come back to a motorcycle with a clogged fuel injector or carbs that are all gummed up and gross because you hope Stable did its thing, right? It's easier just to remove the fluid. When you go to start your bike for the first time, take a little screwdriver, a little hint for you. Take a screwdriver or a tiny little tack hammer and just tap your floats. tap your float ball. Just give it a little tap, 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 tap on each one of your carbs. That way, if the floats are sticking, they will loosen up at that point. The little jolt from the vibration of the tap will actually loosen your floats up. So if you're worried about adding gas and all of a sudden your carb starts flooding out, that's an easy way to resolve that. Just tap each carb lightly. You don't have to smack the piss out of it. Just tap them lightly. Okay? All right, guys. I fixed it. If I helped you and you saved some money, hey, man, think of me. You can always donate a cup of coffee. I love coffee. I'm not going to lie. Everything you need to know is in the description below. I hope I helped you guys, and I'll catch you on the flip. Toodles.